Hello, everyone. I'm Penny, and today I'm really looking forward to this conversation because I've read a lot about cancer prevention over the years. But today we're going to be talking about a very novel approach, which I've never actually heard of before. And it makes a lot of sense. So I'm here with Dr. Chip Whitney, who is a physician and the founder of Revolutionary Health Services. We're going to get straight into it. So good morning, Dr. Whitney.
Good morning, Penny.
How are
Great
you?
to talk to you. And I really like talking about this subject because arguably cancer is what probably scares the most people about their future health prospects. My entire career, we've talked about preventing cancer. And what do most people think about preventing cancer? So actually, what do you think? What are some of the things that come to mind when you hear about cancer, what doctors do to help you prevent it?
So the first thing that comes to my mind is changing your diet and going vegan. And that's just because a lot of people I know did that when they had cancer scares. They just completely eradicated animal products from their diet. So that's
Important. We're definitely going to talk about that. But traditionally, we doctors think about cancer prevention as colonoscopies, mammogram, skin exams for skin cancer screening, and they're all really important. We all do it. I do it every day. Every single wellness I do with my patients, I make sure that they're up to date on their screening approaches to cancer to catch it early. But that's catching it early.
right.
Not every cancer can we catch early. There are cancers out there. The one I usually use example of is pancreatic cancer. Pretty common. Some people, lung cancer, the same, but unfortunately, many times once it's discovered, it's not treatable. And the only strategy against that one, and it tends to run in families, that it has to be prevented. It can't be treated early like other cancers are. So we all need a strategy to prevent the untreatable.
I think a lot of us are used to the term cancer, but don't actually know what it is. So can you tell us what actually is cancer and how does it occur?
Sure. The cancer is when a good cell goes bad. For various reasons, the cell changes, mutates, the word some people may have heard of. It changes and it becomes very fast growing and it becomes abnormal. And eventually, over sometimes, we really don't know in many cases, but over years, many times, it keeps doubling and doubling and doubling, and eventually overtakes the body and it will break down the organ systems if it's not treated. Most of the time, these cancer cells that form, experts say probably every day we're forming cancer cells, but our immune system takes care of it. So you mentioned eating and exercise, is that those are two of the ways we can really tune up our immune system so that our immune system is able to gobble up all those cancer cells as soon as they hit the ground. So the problem is that sometimes the immune system doesn't do the job right. I have a theory that I've thought about for a long time in terms of, well, why does cancer form? We've talked about all this and that being a carcinogen. Yeah, we know radon is a carcinogen for lung cancer. Smoking, other things are toxic to our bodies and can lead to cancer. But then we've had other things come and go, from saccharin to other artificial sweeteners and other chemicals that manufacturers put into foods, pesticides, Roundup, the chemical found in Roundup called glyphosate is the known carcinogen. So, but very few times do we find any silver bullets. So my theory is that all of them contribute to it. There's all kinds of, so anything that's a poison to our system will potentially poison our bodies, lead to the mutation of cells that ultimately leads to cancer. And so the approach that I'm going to talk about that's novel is looking at whether or not we're being impacted by toxicity. So I want to kind of take away the kind of confusion that people have about that. I had confusion for many years myself about toxicity because it just seemed like kind of esoteric, hard to wrap your brain around. See, I'm somewhat like voodoo medicine. Is it really anything we can do about that? Is it important? Well, I've come to watch that it is very important on many people. So basically, toxicities are the poisons that come into our life. Every human on the planet and all of human existence, we've had to have the ability to detoxify. We have to get rid of the poisons adequately, and we have built-in ways to make it work. And And basically, that's the natural mechanisms of detoxification. Basically, we have bowel movements, we urinate, we detoxify through our skin, and the liver is the organ that's its primary purpose is to help us detoxify. So we all have to detoxify. So that's kind of the general approach of how we do it, so that we can work through either reducing the exposures or identifying the toxins that are potentially bringing us down.
It is literally the first time I've heard anybody mention it in just such an easy to understand kind of way, because I guess if you think about changing your diet and going that route, you are, maybe without even directly knowing, but trying to change the way that your body detoxifies, right?
Those are definitely key components to it. Yeah.
So I know a lot of people who aren't actually that concerned about like heart disease and dementia and other serious conditions, but when it comes to cancer, they are petrified. And it's because everybody, I think, has somebody in their family that seems to have it or have had it or, have some form of experience with it. Why is that?
Well, I agree with you. I mean, again, as I said before, it's really a scary proposition to potentially get cancer and have to go through the treatments for that, because they can be pretty miserable to go through. But some people are particularly afraid because they don't have much heart disease or maybe dementia in their family, but everybody in the family tends to get cancer. I've absolutely noticed trends in certain families where cancer is the predominant one that seems to bring down their health as they get older. And so I've always kind of wondered, why is that tends to happen? Well, I learned a statistic a few years ago when I started learning about the whole toxicity impact on human health and detoxification approaches, that up to 25% of the population genetically don't detoxify very well. So when we're exposed to those multiple carcinogens, I call it the multiple carcinogen theory, where it's not often any single bullet that kills people. It's over the course of years, decades, or a lifetime that we're peppered with all of these pesticides and air pollution and dirty water, dirty air, et cetera, that are hammering on us. But some people are genetically more able to detoxify, getting those out of our system than others. Again, 25% sometimes just don't detoxify very well. So that my theory is, and I've not read it in any proven scientific study, but intuitively it makes a lot of sense. And I think it's where we're going to go in terms of cancer prevention. Most research and money is spent on cancer treatments, rightly so. And we had some major breakthroughs in the last decade in treating cancers when they come. But it's tough to do research on preventing cancer. But my strong theory, and especially watching so many people have the ill effects symptom-wise of toxicity, and then some of those people are also ones that tend to have that family history where it tends to run through the family, is that I believe that just not being able to effectively get them out of get these toxins out of their system is what ends up leading their family and members and potentially themselves to the effects of the outcome of cancer.
Do you think it's the patterns that families tend to kind of all adhere to, or traditionally, for instance, like when a family all have similar eating patterns or living patterns, do you think that affects why it's common in some families?
No doubt. I mean, there's no doubt that we kind of become our parents, and the culture we grow up in is often the culture we pass down to our kids, unless we intentionally break that cycle. And without question, there are the cultures within some families where they don't exercise like they should, they don't eat as healthy as they should, et cetera. But there's also lots of patients I have who do tend to have a healthy culture of eating and exercise, but they still tend to have cancer being the primary disease that hits them as they get older. So it's a piece of the puzzle. And it's kind of part of the strategy that I talk about in how I can approach someone who does have a family history of cancer. So as I said in the previous talk we did, is that when I meet a new patient, I look at them And first thing I do is I take a look at their family history and I say, okay, where does their genetics tend to take them? If they tend to all get dementia in the family, we go down the dementia discussion a little more deeply. Heart attack and stroke, it's what happens the earliest in most people. We go down that path if they got a bad family of that family history of that. But in this case, if they got a family history of cancer, we dig in, we look into why that might be.
What is your actual strategy when it comes to helping your patients prevent cancer, especially the ones that have to be prevented? Because you said that some are only really spotted by the time that they're untreatable. So what would you kind of do to help people that are ready to just do all they can to prevent it?
So there's three parts to it. Number one is tuning up the immune system. Number two is reducing the exposure to the toxins of life. And number three is identifying and maximizing the elimination of the toxicities that can come into life. And that's not even actually measuring the tox, because a lot of times it's tough to measure them. And what do the numbers mean? It's not like cardiovascular disease where it's a very numbers, metrics oriented preventive approach. This is really more of a true life strategy that you begin as early as you possibly can. So I'll kind of dig into each one of those three. Tuning up the immune system. So we need our immune system. We use, as I've discussed before, we use inflammation through our immune system to attack the enemy, whether it's the infection of coronavirus, whether it's the toxins themselves that we're exposed to, or the cancer cells resulting from years and decades of toxin exposure, that our immune system needs to fire up and kill the enemy. And that's all the basic ways of a lot of what we health promoting physicians talk about is healthy sleep tunes up our immune system. Healthy eating, nutrition tunes up our immune system. Exercise unequivocally tunes up our immune system. Stress reduction, all of those lifestyles that you hear are healthy, primarily they're involved with tuning up our immune system to keep us healthy and keep us safe. So I'm not going to get too much into detail on that one because that could be a 2-day lecture on that, what we can do about that. Most people are familiar. That's kind of the general approach I did for years in terms of cancer prevention, is that, be healthy and let your immune system kill the enemy. So I'll focus more in minimizing the exposures. Okay, so we have to live. We interact with our environment, whether it's the cleanest place on earth or the dirtiest place on earth, that we are all exposed to the environment that we're in. So the approach I talk to people about this is clean air, clean water, clean food. Those are the big three ways that we can minimize our exposure, especially, again, if you've got a family history of it, we want to make sure our world is clean. And some of it's easy. I mean, it's just like filtered water. I mean, it's very easy to just get for like $20 online. You can buy a pitcher of a water filter that filters out the water. It gets rid of almost all of the impurities. It's keeping your refrigerator and drink nothing but filtered water. You get more fancy ones for the house, but just any type of filtered water is good. The one caution I'll say is that the plastics, some of the chemicals in the plastics that we're exposed to have it. So we have to be careful about bottled water, especially if it's not a BPA-free water container. That I always tell family, patients, and friends, just if your water bottle's been baking in the sun, throw it away, because it's probably leaching out some of the plastics from in the water bottle into the water you're drinking. It may not be good. Just get a new one. So clean water, clean food. That's another reasonably easy one. It's the reason that over the course of the last 10 years, I'm transitioning as many people who are able to clean food, avoid the pesticides. The pesticides we have in food are very carcinogenic, and I believe. We know about glyphosate, and that's in a lot of the foods. So what organic foods are clean food. And sometimes they're more expensive. They definitely are more expensive. And so it is an investment in your health that I do encourage. I mean, arguably, it's the most cost-effective investment money-wise that you can have, is buying as much of your food as you're able to organic, especially the fruits, the vegetable, and the grains. That's where we tend to see the most pesticides is in those. If you're on a budget and you have to be a little bit cautious on how much you're expending, that it can be an issue. Some of the organics are not that bad. Some of them are expensive. There's something out there called the Dirty Dozen. You can just search Dirty Dozen foods, and you'll get a list, sometimes long lists of foods that have the most pesticides in them. And it's actually, it makes sense that they are the berry foods: strawberry, raspberries, blueberries, it's apples, it's spinach, it's stuff that's sitting on the surface open, or it's very sweet and the bugs love them. And when bugs love to eat the foods that we eat, we humans put pesticides in them to kill the bugs. So that's why they tend to, and the berries are particularly bad because they got soft skins and those pesticides absorb in more easily. So clean food, especially the Dirty Dozen. I always encourage people, even though vegetables and fruits are healthy, if you're out in a restaurant, unless you know that it's organic foods that you're eating and the Dirty Dozen, avoid the Dirty Dozen in the restaurant.
Thank you.
Yeah, so dirty water, dirty food, and then dirty air pollution. Someplace the air is very clean. I'm here in the mid-Atlantic. It tends to be pretty dirty air between Washington and New York City. So air pollution, and sometimes we can't avoid that. But frankly, if somebody has a family history of cancer in their family, getting an air purifier to clean whatever's in the air, whether it's air pollution, whether it's mold toxicity or whatever, having air filters in the rooms that you spend 80-90% of your time in would be a potentially it's inexpensive, potentially healthy investment to do, just to kind of maximize your clean air. The less that your body is exposed to, the more your immune system is going to be able to focus on the really important things. So those are kind of my strategy: clean air, clean water, clean food, and then obviously the other carcinogens of life that we all know about, smoking and other things that we want to minimize our exposure to.
Hearing about an air purifier is interesting. I think when me and you spoke a long time ago, I told you about my friend who had got really sick after toxic mold poisoning. And so, yeah, those things would have been a massive help, having an air purifier. But
yeah, well, honestly, that's for another discussion for in today's time. But the biotoxins of the world that, frankly, until the last 3 to 5 years, I did not understand, until I implemented the dementia program that I do, that I didn't understand that the biotoxins that we all have. I mean, by biotoxin, I mean bio is living, and then toxin is toxin. So the toxins that are alive.
Yeah.
So just a quick overview of the biotoxin, like you referred to, is that we have about estimated 1 trillion cells in our body. Well, we have an estimated 5 to 10 trillion stowaways of the organisms that live within us: viruses, bacteria, parasites, and mold. So it's normal to have those. And if they stay where they belong, lining our sinuses and nasal passages, upper part of our respiratory, huge part in our mouth and our GI system, if they stay where they belong, we actually need them. We need them for hormones, and we need them for neurochemicals, for nerve functioning, and other things, and regulation of the immune system. But if they invade our world and enter into our world and hit our organs, our brain, or the arteries along the way, they have the potential of doing damage. And ultimately, I kind of believe the root cause of many disease, once we discover it, is going to be a lot of these biotoxins. But that's for a different discussion on this. But
I'll look forward to that one.
Yeah, it is. It is an important one. I never really understood until recently how important that was. In addition to immune system tuning up, in addition to minimizing your exposure, if you've got a personal history of cancer, family history of cancer, or just want to avoid cancer, then you got to work on your elimination processes. It's a brief discussion on how does our body get rid of these toxins? I touched on it briefly, but we poop it out, we pee it out, we sweat it out, and our liver detoxifies. So one of the more important and simple things to do is to have a strategy on your own, work with your doctor, have a bowel movement every day or every other day. That's a huge way that our body detoxifies, we eliminate through our stool. It's waste. It's everybody knows it as waste, and there's a reason for that. It's because it's helping ourselves to get rid of that. So if you're prone to constipation, what happens is that these toxins that are in the stools, as it making their way through your tract, get recirculated into your bloodstream. And they can not just poison you one time, but 2, 3, or 4 times if you're not having a bowel movement, ideally every day. You hear about drinking lots of water because it's healthy for you. Yeah, it keeps you from being dehydrated. That's what a hangover is when people drink too much, is for the most part, it is dehydration, and it'll make you feel good if you stay hydrated. But more importantly, our kidneys, again, it's the other source of waste elimination, is that our kidneys will help to flush it out. So the more clean water you drink, the more your kidneys can do their job of eliminating the toxins that you're exposed to. So if you do have that genetic difficulty of eliminating the toxins, those 2 interventions are simple and super important. And the sweat it out, that was the one that I frankly I really didn't understand for years myself, until I started wrapping my brain around the context of why it's important. So in the process of when I find somebody who's having fibromyalgia, brain fog, GI symptoms, a whole host of symptoms, a lot of neurological symptoms from the effects of various toxins, that we have a deeper discussion about all this. But when I talk about sweating out, I am convinced, I've not read it, but I'm convinced there's a subset of people who are just master detoxifiers through our skin. We have huge surface area. It's our biggest organ in our body. There's a trivia question, if any families like trivia out there. What's our biggest organ of the body? It's the skin. But basically, it's one of the purposes of sweating is to detoxify. And I've got a number of people who, long before I ever started talking about it, were doing Epsom salt baths because they loved it. They were doing hot yoga. I was kind of criticizing people doing hot yoga for years, but they said, I just feel so good when I do that. Well, now I know they are detoxifying from it. Or you hear of people loving going in saunas. You can even buy reasonably inexpensively these days compared to the past, a sauna, a far infrared sauna for your home. Again, they all help in terms of the skin detoxification. And some people just feel really good when they do that. Quick story is one man I'm working with on mold toxicity, like you were referring to, is that he came to me I think it was October, and he said, gosh, I feel like I backslid. I just don't feel very good right now. I just feeling pretty good over the summer. So we started digging into why. I mean, I always have to ask the question, why is this happening? Well, long story short is that over the summer, he lived not too far from the New Jersey shore, and he was 5 days a week going down to the Jersey shore and swimming in the ocean for 45 minutes. So he was functionally, he was taking a big Epsom salt bath for 45 minutes, 5 days a week, and he was detoxifying through that. And once he started doing that at home with our Epsom salt baths, he started feeling a bit better again. So it was one of the stories that really opened up my mind at how really important skin detoxification is for some people. Some people don't like it because they get overheated, they don't like it, and they may not be skin detoxifiers. They might be more of the bowel movement limit. It's kind of funny discussions I have with people on this topic, and that some people feel so really, really good after a good bowel movement because they're getting rid of their toxins. So
I think we literally need to do a whole conversation about detoxification or something like this, because there are just, even what you've just said about the sea, I used to always feel so like way more, refreshed after a holiday than just because I was away. And I definitely think I'm one of the people that detoxify through the skin, definitely. And so I think
I encourage you to take a look at a video I did while I was on vacation recently down in the Florida Keys, talking about the effect of UV radiation on our immune system, and probably detoxification too, because ultraviolet radiation gets a big bad rap. And yes, sunburns are terrible, but I truly believe through the ultraviolet rays stimulating improving our immune systems in good doses, frequent small amounts. But and then I do think that detoxification through the skin is probably a mechanism of why the sun helps out with people.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
Thank you so much. Is there anything else that you would like to add? If for anyone who's listening who is feeling like me right now, who's just like,
well, that's a loaded question, because this is going to turn into several of these videos on this topic, kind of breaking down each of the components we introduced today. but it's really have hope. It's really have hope because one kind of a quick story is that a lot of people who have family histories of things like pancreatic cancer that scare them, that they don't even realize how much it scares them until they actually have hope. So I was talking to a woman one time where she's in her 50s or so, and we were talking. I looked in her family history review, and I saw that a parent and a grandparent on that same side of the family, or I forget, or a grandparent, they both died of pancreatic cancer. So I had actually at that time recently learned the connection of oral bacteria to pancreatic cancer. I mean, it's a cancer that oral health most significantly impact, or poor oral health and bacteria significantly impact. So we started talking about oral health, how that, the bacteria of the mouth, P. gingivalis, it can reduce your risk it can increase your risk of pancreatic cancer. So if you just see your hygienist, do good home oral care, pay more attention to your mouth, we can look at the bacteria of your mouth. So it was about a maybe 90 second to 2 minute discussion about that overview of that topic. She was actually got tears start to form well up in her, because I recognized that she had actually she's in her 50s, about the age where we start to see pancreatic cancer. And she basically she was convinced that she was going to fall prey to pancreatic cancer, that she was going to be that next person in the family to die of pancreatic cancer. And it was scary. And she knew there was really nothing that she could do about it for early detection. And now she had hope. So oral bacteria are one of the carcinogens that I didn't talk about that play into several different cancers. So just to leave people with a belief that there really is hope, there is an opportunity to really alter your future. And it's not any single intervention, it's a lifestyle approach of all three categories, whether it's tuning up your immune system, minimizing your exposure, or improving your elimination of the toxicities of life, that just incorporating those in your lifestyle, I absolutely believe that's going to reduce your risk and give you an opportunity for a better future.
Thanks again for sharing so much with us and for opening our eyes and imparting hope.
Yep. Prevent the untreatable.